both feel it. I don't know, but it's finally just come about.
Few rock groups of the 1980s broke down as many musical barriers and were as original as the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who evolved from fun-loving party boys to alt-rock elder statesmen over the decades. Perfecting a rousing musical style that combined funk and punk rock, the Chili Peppers spawned a slew of imitators in their wake, but still managed to be the leaders of the pack into the 21st century. Making noise on the Los Angeles scene with early albums such as 1985's Freaky Styley and 1989's Mother's Milk, they made a huge breakthrough with 1991's landmark Blood Sugar Sex Magik, a multi-platinum smash hit that spawned some of their most recognized songs, including Give It Away and Under the Bridge. That album's success was bested in 1999 with another catalog peak, the chart-topping Californication, which found the band in a more reflective and melodic state. Into the 2000s, they remained fixtures at the top of the international charts with By the Way and the double album Stadium Arcadium, the latter of which hit number 1 in almost 24 countries. While the 2010s were quieter for the group, they still scored platinum hits with The Adventures of Raindance Maggie from 2011's I'm With You and Dark Necessities from 2016's The Getaway. In 2022, the Chili Peppers returned with a pair of full-lengths Unlimited Love and Return of the Dream Canteen. However, here are interesting facts about Red Hot Chili Peppers. Anthony Kiedis feud with Mike Patton. Every rock star worth their salt has feuded with a colleague, and LA Weekly says Anthony Kiedis is no exception, and his opponent was Mike Patton, Faith No More's thousand-voiced frontman. In the 1980s, both bands had a similar, funk metal sound, and Faith No More had even played as an opener for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. However, when both bands started breaking big, Kiedis saw Faith No More's video for the song Epic and took offense, as he felt Patton was copying his mannerisms. Kiedis started taking public potshots at Patton, but when the Faith No More man declined to respond, things calmed down. Unfortunately, the animosity started anew in 1999, when Patton and his other band Mr. Bungle were removed from various festivals, and discovered this was apparently at the behest of Kiedis, who threatened to pull the Peppers out if Patton's men stay in the lineup. Why this happened is anyone's guess, though it's worth noting that Mr. Bungle had an album called California coming out at roughly the same time Californication was released. Regardless, this prompted Patton to start publicly ripping into Kiedis, and one of his bands, Fantomas, even ruthlessly mocked the Peppers on stage. Fortunately, things seem to have mellowed out. In 2010, Patton said about the feud, "I've no idea what it was about then and I don't know now, but I bet we'd have a warm embrace if we saw each other now." The Red Hot Chili Peppers' tumultuous year 1992. In 1992, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were on the cusp of true greatness, only for tensions inside the band to almost tear them apart, according to Diffuser. The band was riding high on the wave of their 1991 smash hit album Blood Sugar Sex Magik, and superstardom was there for the taking. However, guitar prodigy John Frusciante, who was a relatively recent addition to RHCP, felt uncomfortable with the sudden fame. He started arguing with singer Anthony Kiedis about the direction of the band. The tensions between the guitarist and the others kept growing, and as The Guardian reports, it didn't exactly help that Kiedis was a recovering addict at the time, while Frusciante was increasingly into drugs. Frusciante botched an important Saturday Night Live performance. Kiedis called it intentional sabotage. Things finally came to a head during a trip to Japan, when the disconnected six-string maestro unexpectedly informed their manager that he was out. The other Chili Peppers managed to talk him into playing the show they had scheduled that night, but after that, Frusciante was gone. His departure was so swift that Rolling Stone had to hastily scrub him off the cover photo of an upcoming issue. Flea's difficult childhood. It's easy to assume that a man professionally known as Flea didn't have the most conventional of childhoods, but few could believe just how rough things were for young Michael Balzeri. According to The Guardian, the Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist basically grew up in one of the seedier episodes of Breaking Bad. "I was raised in a very violent, alcoholic household," Flea says. His father left the family when he was only 6, and his mother and stepfather left the young boy terrified. This less than optimal start in life created a snowball effect that took him to some very, very dark places. By the time he was 11, young Flea sought solace from his turbulent home on the streets, where he'd routinely hang out until 4 a.m. in an opinion piece he wrote for Time. The musician says this was also when he started smoking marijuana, and soon enough, started abusing virtually any drug he could get a hold of. He got in trouble with the dealers and the cops alike, and scary gun-toting criminals lurked around him. Overdoses were a part of life, and Flea lost 3 of his greatest friends before they turned 26. It was a brutal way of life that he couldn't quite shake until he was 31, and he was 40 before he could consider forgiving his parents for the environment they raised him in. The half-life of John Frusciante. After John Frusciante left the Red Hot Chili Peppers for the first time in 1992, his life went downhill so fast, it's almost a miracle that he managed to return to the land of the living. As Lauder tells us, the guitarist's exit was largely fueled by his desire for creative freedom as opposed to the performing monkey act he saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers were becoming. But when he actually left the band, his creativity was soon curbed by depression, and later all the heroin and cocaine he could get his hands on. He voluntarily embarked on the path of a full-time junkie, with all the nasty trimmings this entailed, to the point that even his friend Flea, who had spent his life around drug users, soon drifted away from him. Even when his friend River Phoenix died of acute multiple drug intoxication, Frusciante didn't stray from his path. In 1998, Frusciante eventually realized that he was marching towards an inevitable death, and after a few false starts, ended his years in the wilderness by going stone cold sober. Later that year, he rejoined the struggling Chili Peppers at Flea's behest. At this point, he had suffered 5 near-fatal overdoses, and his teeth were so utterly destroyed that the dental bill was $90,000. However, he was undoubtedly back and stayed with the band until 2009. The Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Nasty Assault Arrest. In 1990, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were wild-up-and-comers, and sometimes, their crazy on-stage antics got more than a little inappropriate. Such was the case with their MTV-filmed Spring Break performance in Daytona Beach, which UPI tells us led to half the band getting arrested. During the performance, bassist Flea and drummer Chad Smith decided to kick things up a notch by leaping off the stage and assaulting an audience member. The band had already whipped itself in a furious state when Flea unexpectedly pounced a female spectator and started spinning her on his shoulders, while Smith joined the fray by pulling her swimming suit aside and slapping her rear. Because this apparently wasn't enough, Flea then got on top of the woman, asked her to perform a sex act and then started to simulate said act. The shocked and battered woman called for help, and the Peppers were swiftly escorted away. Smith ended up getting charged with battery, while Flea's list of misdeeds included battery, disorderly conduct, and solicitation to commit an unnatural and lascivious act.